She didn't say, so.
So it was a lot. Like I didn't realize how many like publications like just have to change it. So yeah, you're like finding something like holy crap, change that. So I'm just working on it. Okay, it is 10. You want me to go ahead? All right. Hi, I'm going to call this meeting to order. So let's go ahead and start with the agenda. Did everyone have a chance to look over the agenda for today? I get approval of the agenda.
I have one addition.
One addition?
Yes, and I thought it after I printed this on, of course. The cataloging committee has a recommendation for the search matrix. They have an update to recommend that I would like to present a little bit.
Can I get a motion for approval with this amendment? Second? Second. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the minutes from our last meeting. So everybody had a chance to review the minutes. Is there any amendments that need to be made? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Hold on, at number 3 under approval of the minutes from June 17th, it says Brandy Green. Instead of Brandy Graves.
It does.
Yeah, you know.
Any other amendments that need to be made? That looks a lot. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Second. All right, let's go on to the Indiana State Library report.
We've been busy since the last. When we met in September, we were in the midst of working on the regional roundtables. All of those have been completed. I think I saw just about everybody here, at least one of them, not more than that. They went extremely well for a first-year effort. We had more than 150 participants from 64 of our member libraries. So that was an excellent showing. Very pleased with how that went. The executive committee has approved adding this as part of our regular rotation annually. So we'll be looking for dates and locations next fall very shortly. Actually, if you want to volunteer your library, feel free to send me an email and we can take a look. I am still trying to find locations that are relatively centrally located in the 5 regions, just so that the most possible people can make it, with it being a little less of a drive for them. The Picnic Service Roundtable came off at the end of October. We had 33 participants that I certified. I know there were other libraries that had groups where they did internal LEU certifications. It was an interesting conversation, full of lots of X's and U's, but it was fun, and it's good to hear how many libraries have similar situations and how far things can go from one end of the spectrum to the other. So I appreciate everyone's help and participation with that. It was a really fun roundtable because everyone chatted a lot, had a lot of interaction going on, and I really appreciated that. On the training front, I plan to have the basic circulation asynchronous class finished at the end of this month. So if you have staff members who are new, they'll be able to take that asynchronously on demand at your library without needing to wait for the live classes. The circulation and whole class are actually being taught live today downtown in Indianapolis. And it will probably be March before we schedule them again because they are on a quarterly rotation right now. So we will have something in place to assist staff during that gap. The deduplication was at Thanksgiving. Almost 200,000 records were merged under, so we are that much closer to cleaning up the catalog. We finalized the Novelist Select contract to provide our OPAC enhancements going forward. You will see the new content, including things like series listings and reader recommendations appearing in the catalog after the upgrade. Speaking of the upgrade, we're in the middle of training right now. Did the first training last Friday, second one yesterday, and the third week tomorrow. I will then be madly searching to finalize the recorded version so that anyone who either had audio issues or who was not able to attend one of the live workshops will be able to catch up on the high points of what we have coming up. Hopefully you've seen this already, but we will be bringing down the servers on the 23rd at 8 p.m. to begin the maintenance process. And we are asking that you plan on the full maintenance window for the 28th. If we are fortunate enough to be able to bring it up earlier than that, we will let you know. It will come out on the support listserv, but just in case something does not cooperate the way it's expected to, we wanted to go ahead and leave the full maintenance window in place. I am working on an upgrade site, just like we had for 2.5, so that you will have the resources to refer back to, and that should be finalized tomorrow. So it will have anything that you need to do in preparation, which at this point is pretty much just making sure that your offline mode still works, and that your patrons know that circulation will be down a little bit. But otherwise, we seem to be going very well. Everything's on schedule with that. Had a query from the community about the possibility of including sex offender information in patron registration notes. To the executive committee, they referred to legal. Legal gave us their opinion, brought it back. Because sex offender status is considered a matter of public record. It's not illegal for us to capture it and retain it. But the executive committee felt this should be highly discouraged at this point because they were concerned about prejudice on the part of staff who opened something up, and if there's just a note in there that they're on the sex offender registry, it may cause staff to act in a less friendly manner than they might otherwise, without them being able to know what even happened. Because there are a lot of things that can get you put on that list, unfortunately, and not all of them are relevant. And certainly, unless they have a particular finding that prevents them from accessing the library, we want to provide them with equal service to all of our other patrons. And this is actually in your packet, but as you hopefully heard, we've been working on these for a while now, but these are the draft icons that we're working on. If we can get them turned around, we're going to go ahead and try to implement the draft icons with upgrade. I'll get the files to Jason in time. The cataloging committee had a couple of recommendations about them. I'm curious to see what you think. Are there any that are particularly difficult to understand? The photograph one I know is too dark. It's missing one of the white rings, so that has been repaired already. But
I didn't pick up a handout when I walked in. Kind of would probably be handy to have one. Thank you.
And the cataloging committee said that they would check and confirm that these actual search definitions will work. It should be fine. We already tested it on the dev server, and as long as things were cataloged correctly, they appear to be showing correctly. To see the difference in how your end product looks, you get samples of stock icons versus the graph icons.
So which are you saying is going to appear, the one with stock icons or the flat icons?
The green ones.
The green ones, the flat square.
It was interesting from the testers, they came down about half and half on the stock icons. Half of the people said these are great, they're much more clear, and the other half said these are awful. My patrons will never understand what these are. So,
We all have those patrons regardless of what you.
yeah, it does not matter, yes. Well, the really good news is, as you can see from the example here, the second or third column, that label will appear on the record as well. So if a patron is struggling, they can just look for the words Blu-ray, DVD, things like that, and help guide them in this. And one thing that the new icons will require is, I know this is probably going to be less an issue for you and more for your cataloging staff, but if an item requires an OSN tag to bring the icon up appropriately, if there isn't one, there simply will be no icon. The searching will still work, but the tags and the icons are predicated on materials being cataloged correctly. So there may be some cleanup that you'll need to perform locally if there are some vintage records that didn't quite catch that. And I am trying to share that with everyone during the upgrade training, because I know it creates a bit of work, but it will make the catalog a much nicer place for our end users to visit. Okay. Can anyone think of anything else that I was supposed to be reporting back to you on that doesn't appear elsewhere in the agenda? Yeah? Okay. If I think of anything, or you do, let me know. We'll call that the end of the library report.
Okay. Let's move on to unfinished business. The first one is the on-the-fly book club management.
It's a couple of pages back, just before the icons start. This is the text that you looked at last meeting. You asked that it go out to the remaining regional roundtables for the rest of their input, because we were only halfway through at that point. And the general consensus was this seemed very reasonable to everyone. I thought they could look at any strong negative responses. So if your game, I'd like to implement.
Motion to approve the procedure as written.
I'll second it. We vote? Sorry, I'm bad at this.
Yeah, okay, let's vote.
I forget what I said. Sorry.
All in favor?
I'm sorry, it's been a long way.
All in favor of approving this?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then on to internal use profiles.
Yes. You guys said you wanted to go back and talk to your home libraries about how you're using this. Did you have a chance to do so? Did you have any follow-up?
refresh my memory. What? Sorry.
The issue was we wanted to define how the internal use profile is being used, whether it's something that you, it's intended to be used by staff and was originally written to be used locally only. It has extended borrowing permissions. So you can borrow something for, what, 100 years on an internal use profile, but it's being used a variety of different ways right now. So we're talking about whether or not A, we should lock it down, and B, if so, what bounds should we place on it? And as you actually was actively using it, you said you wanted to table it, come back to it.
Well, I found it for we have a card that we call damaged, and so we're using that on damaged, also using it on our van. So I do know we use it.
You're using it exclusively for your locally
It's
held
only
materials?
our materials.
Okay.
Anybody else actively using it?
We use it. Same thing, damaged and technical services, if anything would have to be checked out for them, like a replacement case or something like that, but it's on our items also.
Well, it doesn't sound like we have a recommendation to make any changes at this point. See a little bit of no.
I would think as long as it's being used on your local, only on your materials, it shouldn't be an issue. We have other people using it for things that aren't their items.
We had a library that was using it to store their bad patrons. So someone who had extensive fines or was barred, they were changing them from resident to internal use profiles. It was an interesting choice. I'm not sure it made sense for them at the time.
The reason for that is it also does not, they don't expire for like 100 years. That was
So they
Point
can
of
keep them.
So they can fine
forever.
them.
Yeah.
No forgiveness. 100 years is not enough.
Never.
Well,
You know, it depends on how
Never
many
forgive
years of
you.
abuse you're talking about. Yeah, it's tough.
What if you opine
Well, we have other mechanisms in place. It may just be that some of those patrons were brought over that way during their migration, that they were, but, and it's been a while since I looked into that particular issue or spoke with that library. But it was one of those things we found because we're curious how many libraries were actually even using the profile. And the list was quite short, with a couple of libraries that had unusually large, what turned out to be resident groups on there, so. Okay, well, then we'll leave it be and see if it becomes an issue again in the future.
onto the training manual?
And I need to apologize for this. Christina got me the paperwork immediately after last meeting. I have not had a chance to work on it. And with the upgrade coming and the fact that we'll probably have even more new screenshots, I hope you're okay with us tabling that until spring. Okay, I just didn't want to drop it since we did discuss it last meeting, and we're supposed to be in progress.
Go ahead and move on to new business. First is the pest policy.
Yes, this came out of the regional roundtables. And I mentioned it to the EC, and they seemed all right with the idea. And that is that we come up with some sort of shared, if not policy, procedures for handling materials to help minimize how pests may invade and be disseminated amongst the consortium. There are I don't want to say standards, but there are recommendations out there about things that you should be doing when you clear your Dropbox, et cetera, to make sure that nothing untoward has gotten in. But what are your thoughts on having some sort of consortium-wide recommendation? We move the most material around the state. If something gets into our packages, we run the risk of it getting a long way around very quickly.
I think it's definitely a good idea to have a consortium-wide policy or procedure, or having it worded, because like you said, I mean, like if she gets one and doesn't check it or doesn't do, you know, whatever needs to be done to it and sends it, you know, over to, well, now they've got it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like not checking your kid's head for advice. I'm a kindergartner, sorry.
Would it be courtesy to tell us that someone has had a problem or something? I mean, I know we take books every week to the nursing home, and they give us a heads up every time they have an investigation or a problem with something, we can give us a call and tell us. And we're aware. I mean, we already take precautions, but it just gives us an extra, you know, like if somebody is slacking off or, you know, or kind of like, well, we haven't had anything, so maybe staff is becoming a little, you know, sometimes you kind of get a little lax, and so maybe it's like, oh, you know,
Kind of
of
levels.
yeah.
Levels.
So I don't know, that kind of, that might be, make people a little more vigilant, so you're looking, you know, instead of just, it's in the back of your mind, but so maybe that would kind of be helpful.
I know one of the challenges that I've seen so far with that is we have some libraries that are not we've indicated a sense of embarrassment about it happening, which is of course ridiculous because we all run that risk. Anytime any library checks out materials, we run the risk that something will happen to them. So I think if we could normalize that and make it a simple process where no one has to feel like they're being picked on or singled out, I think it would be a great thing to incorporate into this, because I just say, if it's just out there and everyone's aware.
I think it kind of wards off panic too.
Yeah.
I will say we found bed bugs in one of our books, and I mean, we've been taking care of it. It's not we found it on one book. Well, one library heard that we had bed bugs, and so everything that we got back through Evergreen was in bags. Like, not everything we had bed bugs. So they were, you know, freaking out about it. And yes, so, you know, I think some education might be a good idea for everybody. Like, bed bugs are a public issue, not just a library issue. Like the nursing home, I mean, you know, yeah. So.
Roaches. Or
Yeah.
Fleas, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Everything's home's infested.
Yeah.
I know when bed bugs first came out, we used to have canvas bags we took and washed all the time. Yeah, we took our books in to the nursing home, and as soon as the bed bug issue came out, we started using disposable bags. I made staff make sure that, I don't care how good the bag looks or clean it looks, they're disposable bags. So every week they come back, they get ditched. I mean, we just throw them out. And it looks wasteful, and I'm sorry, but it probably is wasteful, but it's a precaution. So, you know, we don't know what's lurking in there, so that's the way it is. So that's what we did. We got rid of the canvas bags. So, because, you know, nobody was washing them every week. And then,
Can I ask a question on top of that? Like, is there anything in place right now that anybody does? Like, do you bar your patrons or block them until you know that the problem has been solved? Like, we have someone who's continuously returning movie cases with bugs inside. So, I mean, it definitely would be nice to have something to back us up. But, I mean, how do you, I know that you need to confront it, but do you block them so that you know it's taken care of?
The one discussion said it is a public health concern, right? So I know we discussed that at the one roundtable, the fact that, you know, that's, they're potentially endangering the community, but I don't think we came to any sort of consensus on how anyone was handling this yet. Does anybody else have a policy on where they have to have, you know, show proof that they've called an exterminator? Ever considered it?
Are bed bugs the main concern, or are there other pests? What else?
There's cockroaches.
Roaches,
That's what we have.
bed bugs,
And they're live and crawling.
You can have the case and they're in there.
If you get some bed bugs, bed bugs to your library, how do you know they can pick it up?
Well, we got a bed bug cooker, humongous thing, and it heats them up. They cook them.
So anything that comes from that place, or anything that was in the
Well,
drop
and
box with those
It
items.
wasn't actually at a patron's house, like it didn't come from their house. They found it on the shelf at the library.
So you had to.
So we don't know, and they live in there. They live forever, until you kill them. So we aren't sure where it came from. I mean, it could have moved from one place to another or something like that, but they're not like fleas. They don't jump around or anything like that. So now we have checks. We have a dog that comes into the library and checks the main branch and the our Westmore branch, and everything that he alerts on, we cook in the cooker. So, but we found once it. And everything that he's alerted on, we've never found an actual.
Bill can probably tell you about some other bugs that you might see. I know silverfish is on the list,
Silverfish,
and the state libraries had problems with silverfish beetles.
those kind of things.
So what, take an exterminator, get rid of that stuff, or do you have to have a cooker?
Bed bugs typically is the cooker.
Yeah.
Is a cooker. They recommend you heat them now. Your other option is to freeze them, but it's not as effective. And the cooker also does not damage your books
As much.
as much. So
Yeah, some things will require an exterminator, others you could probably deal with using heat treatments or cold.
So
Depends on
bed
the-
bugs start out so tiny that you can't really see them now. They're in the color of the page. How do you find them until they get big enough to see?
What I heard is the way that most people discover it is when they find scat. Because they'll leave a trail kind of like fly specks in your books.
So were these cookers and treatments prohibitively expensive?
Not ridiculously, so if you can get an oven for a few $100s.
I think that's what ours was. We got it at Amazon. It's huge.
Yeah. Andrew got one that's big enough, you can actually put a whole armchair inside. You can get much smaller models.
Yes.
When you're flipping through, we take a book, and we open it up and we flip through the pages. How are you going to find a bed bug?
It's possible.
It's possible.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how we found the one.
The samples that I found online when I was trying to find pictures for the workshop actually showed the base of the book, right at the spine. You could see where you had the ick oozing out. Now, that was an extreme example, but I mean, I suppose you picked up a book and looked at the bottom of it and there was some dark specks right along the spine. I would treat it.
The other day I saw a
No matter
bug
what.
and I
Yeah,
was
it's like
dying.
something.
It's a bug, it's gone now. So it could have been a bed bug.
Could have been. And that's part of why we want to, boost awareness on how to locate, how to treat, and all of that. It's hopefully not likely that you're going to be passing a lot of mice from building to building. Bugs are the more obvious option, but
I'm surprised you open up.
Can you make that happen to have my boss up in there? She'd like jump on top of the roof.
never seen that.
something to keep in mind is if you do have other pests like rodents, they can be disease carriers. And so you might want to be aware just of if you have, if your library backs up to a cornfield and every winter they come in and try to get warm, you may just need to let everybody know, we had the exterminators here, take care of our little furry friends. So if you're worried, use a little extra Lysol.
Yeah, most, and their droppings are big. Well, comparatively speaking, right? They're not big. We consider they're big, but
There are many old books in our library right now. Because they've got tracks or they've got ooze.
and they've got stuff that you just don't know what they are.
Mhm.
It could just be, like, well, I don't know that. It could be I know, right?
Aren't you glad you joined us, Dana?
Request around masks and it's just to get dropped in.
Well, maybe you should have, like, you have a conservator, say library Rebecca, and she can, like, identify all that stuff, because we had a book that was donated and I took it to her and the cover looked really weird, but, like, I had no idea what it was, and right away she's like, that's insect damage, like, they've been eating away at it, and so maybe she could do, like,
Yeah, a reference
provide
guide
some
to show what it looks
education
like.
about common things that you would probably come across, and then ways to kind of approach treating those types of materials.
That's what I was gonna say. And a lot of it's our donated materials.
Right.
And that was where we got the one with the silver fish recently.
And it looks like, I mean, I would not have thought, oh, that like an insect was all over that. I would just be like, I don't know, is it looking? Yeah, I don't know. So.
Okay, well, since this is a new topic, what I would like to ask is if each of you would do a little brainstorming, and then we can maybe try to see what all we would like to see as a group everyone work on. Obviously, everyone's going to continue to have their own internal procedures and extended policies, but if there are some reasonable steps that we can all implement just to help any future problems. Things like the communications and getting libraries more comfortable with just saying, hey, this is what happened, we're dealing with it, we want you to help us. Help us nicely. It can happen to any library. I was in a meeting recently with some non-library people. We were talking about pests, and I mentioned that this is an issue for libraries because we do share out our materials, all kinds of materials. We have libraries that circulate stuffed animals. Those can get things in them that we don't like to think about. Books, obviously. And they were starting to get a little shirty with me. I said, and how many of you travel? And these were all people who were traveling sales people. So they spent all their time in hotels. Well, library's safer than where you sleep last night. So.
Next.
Sure. Hopefully it's a little more positive.
The option to use driver's license for circulation.
This is another recommendation from the executive committee. They'd like us to look into it. And I can already tell you that based on a number of the local circulation policies I've received, this is happening already at several libraries where they will accept the driver's license in place of a library card. If we make this switch, this will be a major switch because this is one thing that we agreed on back when the consortium started, was that we were not going to do this. But times change, expectations change. Our users can do so much more with just an ID today in the world than they could 5 years ago.
Do you mean that it would replace a library card, or it just, they didn't bring their card, so they don't have a card, so they don't have their card with them, so they can just show the driver's license? Is that what you're saying? I just wondered.
My recommendation, if we did do that, is they would have to have matching driver's license numbers, just because people tend to move around so much.
Okay, so if they don't have a library card though, they just want to show their license and use the library, they can't.
No, they still need to register to use your.
Well, but.
No.
Oh, you mean like guest pass? Okay.
My only concern is it would have to go along with what you said about ID number matching. It's just with there's so many users and there's so many common names. You know, if Bob Smith comes to my library and I accidentally pull up Bob Smith from Lebanon and check out 10 DVDs to that Bob Smith, and then he never brings them back, and then the Lebanon Bob Smith is really ticked because he knows he didn't check it out. There's just so much room for error there. And I know with our circulation clerks, you know, they're really busy. It's not like they have a lot of time to be messing with that, and it's really handy just to be able to scan the card and go. So I don't know that we would change our local policy. We've gotten our patrons trained to bring their cards. That's how it works.
Yes. You can match pictures though, and the driver's license has an ID. I have the picture ID, which I like better because, well, I should say that, because it is nice to have a face with
The person standing in front of you.
the person standing in front of you rather
For a
than
minor,
somebody giving you a card and you don't know if that's that person anyway.
But I just think there's a lot. I mean, I think you have to type in both driver's license number and name, do 2 separate searches to be sure you've really got the right person. I would be more in favor of, you know, I'd be more in favor of giving someone like a, you know, one-time, okay, you forgot your card. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you get one get out of jail free pass, you forgot it, we get it, we put it in the notes.
So that's what we do.
And I think that is a
Because
courtesy.
there is that occasion, and especially, I mean, in youth services especially, you know, you have that kid that really wants that book, and it's really hard to break that little kid's heart. I've had to do it before, but it's hard. I'm the mean one. But anyway, but we do give them that one-time use, but we always put it on the alert. And so in theory, the next time they come in and say, hey, I haven't brought my, you know, I don't have my card, can you look me up? And, you know, say another staff member looks them up. In theory, that staff member is not going to let them check out because I see you've already done this once. You need to bring your card in, you were reminded of this. And I think the biggest issue is with my staff in particular, they're not going to take the time to make sure they have the right driver's license number, the right, you know, Bob Smith is not going to, from Lebanon, is not going to have 10 DVDs on his. It's just that so much room for error of checking out the wrong person. Plus, I think going back to how many times we went through in the past of merging cards wrong, patron-wise, and I think that right there may help us say no, because people's records would get deleted and matched, and I mean, it was just a mess. And again, items on somebody's card, I never check those out, da 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 da. I mean, I get that it would probably, I mean, everybody's probably using everybody's card anyways, like we have self-checkouts, so we can't know who's really actually using those cards. But I think about, okay, yeah, you can say a driver's license, at least you know for sure it's them. But like for us, it is going to be harder because we do have self-checkouts. So that's going to take extra time on us to look them up, check them out.
I just think it's a dangerous thing to do, really, because when you pull somebody up by name, especially for libraries that register people as, you know, Peggy Smith when her name is Margaret Susan Smith. I mean, I don't know. There's so much danger of getting the wrong person, and I just think we're opening a can of worms.
You're telling your patrons they don't have to be responsible.
Right.
And you're the one taking on the responsibility. If they're not responsible enough to bring their card, are they responsible enough to return the materials?
I agree. Yeah.
And how many checkouts are you really losing by denying that person forgot their card that day? I don't think we're losing
And
that.
we always offer them the option to come back. I mean, we'll hold the books for, you know, like 24 hours or whatever behind the desk so that, you know, they can come back in, you know, when they run errands the next day or whatever. Then that way they still have the option to get those exact same books.
And I think we can popularize the option of having your library card on your iPhone or your smartphone. You know, scan that sucker in, and know those people never leave home without that phone.
Right.
So
If you request, if you require a phone license, that's a certain part of the population. You have all your kids, how are they going to do it, on mom's or dad's ID? Then you don't know, well, did they bring the neighbor in?
it's just too dangerous.
Can we recommend not to? Okay.
Yep,
be
they
in
just
favor
asked you
of
to take a
that,
look at it, talk about it, and see if this was something that there was really widespread interest in. It actually came up, I did the talk at ILF that we do annually, and one of the audience members is at a library that is considering Evergreen, but they were very concerned about this requirement. They felt it was not user-friendly.
Okay, does the person go to the store and pay with their ID? No, you have to have your card or your checkbook or the cash.
Well, but as she said, you can do it with your smartphone now.
Yes.
So, you know,
At least have it on your phone.
Well, and like Brandy said, we also, if they forgot their card, we put them behind the desk for a night or two. We date it. So it's not that we're not being
Accommodating.
right.
We try our best, but I mean, like you said, they need to be responsible to bring their card with them.
And when our policy says, and we've agreed, you know, like this is required.
And was it frontline people that were really interested in it? That deal with this all the time?
Or was it
Like,
patron
was it
complaints?
somebody else?
As a small library, which I realize a lot of us in Evergreen are not, but
actually, a larger percentage are than ours.
okay. I'm gonna know who 80% of the regulars are.
Yeah.
And when we've got a small staff and a smaller budget, I might be the only one available to even work the desk. And if I'm in a hurry, I don't want to wait 10 minutes as my line grows while they fiddle through their wallet. I'm going to know who they are, and I'm going to retrieve them from when they return. It's not that I want to be lazy, but it's all of the resources into consideration. Right. Now, those that regularly don't bring it and try to bust out their ID, no, you know, come on, Bob, it's really time. We need to replace this. You need to have it with you.
And I feel bad for when you do know your patrons, because we run into that with our branches. You know, Crothersville and Medora know their patrons every single day. And then they come to Seymour and, well, Crothersville let me use my driver's license. Medora let me use my driver's license. It's like, we're really sorry, we don't know you. I mean, regardless, and that shouldn't make it right. But it makes it really, really hard, even between branches. We're the same library, and yet,
I even tell my patrons I see 3 or 4 times a week that they have to have the card.
of course.
I mean, and they usually come up with their card out. I mean, they're not digging through their wallet while they're standing there, but typically they'll have their card out. But I just.
Is this something that we could just make kind of each library? Can we make a local policy sort of thing? Or
Right now, it's
we're kind of in the same thing as Dana. Is like, we know a lot of our patrons.
The only thing is,
Well,
so if
it
your
would be a
patron
service
comes
for
to
us.
one of the larger
But that's the
libraries now, then they're gonna say,
problem.
heck
So-
no.
And I
So-
have had multiple complaints in the last few months between
So that's
libraries
where the
where
issue
one
is.
library enforces and one library doesn't. And the patron comes in and chews out that other library for saying, no, you have to have your card. Well, they never make me have it at home. They always just look me up.
They're doing it wrong.
Yeah, just joking.
I'm sorry, they're not following policy.
It's very frustrating
It
for the
is.
libraries that are looking at it saying, no, this is our official policy. We're going to stick to it until it changes. If you've got other libraries that are have
consistent for the patrons.
consistently doing something different.
Well, and I can say this from experience when we moved to Evergreen, because we used to be very lax about it. I mean, you pretty much just said, we're like, oh yeah, whatever, before we went to Evergreen. But once we got those patrons, I don't want to say trained because that sounds demeaning, but I mean, once they're used to it, I mean, it probably took 6 months to get everybody used to it. Now, no one ever says anything. I mean, for the most part, we might have like 2 a week will say, oh, I don't have it, can you look me up? But then when we explain that we'll just hold it for them, that seems to appease them. So, I mean, I think it isn't as difficult as like ripping off a Band-Aid. Like, yeah, it's going to hurt for a little while, but you have to just stick to your guns about it. I feel very strongly about not.
Saying that's always part of the spiel when they get a new card too, is, you know, we're like, you have to have this to check out materials. If you want,
No service without your card?
yeah,
It's even on the card.
It is.
I think it is too.
Yeah, but if they don't have their card, how are they gonna know it's up?
They received it.
Read the card.
Sign
Here,
it.
that should just be it. Every time you hand them the card, I'm going to read this to you. And then you're going to sign this affidavit saying that you heard me and understood everything I said.
Something to think about, though, is yes, everyone in this room, which represents less than 20 libraries, you all do agree on that. But even if you come back to the EC and say, we don't want to change anything, all of the libraries who've been doing this since 2008, which there are some that old, they're not going to stop either. So if you did have a policy that was it did get flexible, yes, you could bring it in, but it was also strict. And then if you don't match this driver's license number correctly, then it's on that library to deal with fines or whatever. I don't know if we can be that specific, but spell it out so that they do have the option, perhaps, and they have the option to not do it, so you don't have to change anything. That would at least put on paper what's already happened.
Because people are gonna ignore it anyway, and they clearly are,
I mean,
so.
it's not good to reward them for that, but if we could kind of tighten in what they're doing a little bit, that would also be a step.
That's a good point.
That is.
And you could make it a local option, like Portia said, where you could enact this as a supplement to the official policy in your local
How do
procedures.
those libraries get around the fact that their board signed the Evergreen policy agreement? What the heck, I don't care what my board says, really good.
They feel very strongly that this is how they want to do it, and so they are.
One of the things I like about Evergreen is that there were things that everybody doesn't say. You walk into each other library, you're going to be treated the same, whether it's you have your library card or whatever. But one of our backstops for if somebody comes in and says, I never checked this out. Well, you couldn't check it out without presenting your card. You're the only one who has your card. If it got checked out on your card, you were here and you checked it out. So, pay your fines, pay your loss, whatever. But, I would hate giving up that card.
But if it's worded in a way that it's a local policy only, then obviously your library could still keep it, as is, which is, what I imagine we would do. Most of them, sitting in this room at least would do. And then you would have your other ones that, yes, this is our local policy, but I think that you would also need to make sure that your patrons understand that they can't go to another library.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your patrons couldn't go to Jennifer's library and just give them their name or their license.
And
they're probably not going to,
have
but
card,
it's just easier and
It's
more
a
efficient.
time
Yes.
efficient, and again, with being smaller, if we've already got them pulled up, it gives us more time to kindly harass them in reader's advisory and increase circ.
So when you're pulling them up, are you searching just your library patrons? You're not searching
Yes.
everything?
From their actual,
Yeah, there are.
There's
from their
another
actual
thing
return.
to be put in there.
Because we get a lot of people who just are walking downtown and decide, okay, because they're out walking the dog. And so they leave the dog outside with their husband and they run in to get something. And they've only got, they weren't planning a library stop, so they don't have their purse, they don't have whatever.
I
So
used
we
to
get a
have
lot of that.
They would come in and have absolutely no ID at all. And
Yeah.
want to either circulate or get a card. I would love to take your word for it, but I don't know that you're right yet, so.
They're people we know, we see them constantly. We're very small, so. Yeah.
So we're looking for a recommendation here.
Yes.
Do we want to take some time to have some caveats there? Or are we just saying that we would prefer to stick with it as it reads, that the library card is required? I'm asking, everybody, what do you guys think?
And we don't have to make a decision today.
Right,
It's
but just something to think about.
We'd rather table it and discuss it with other libraries and do that.
Like, what is the percentage of libraries in Evergreen right now that wants to do?
I've heard from 3 recently. Which
Out
is
of
not a
100.
huge percentage, but there's some of our more active members. And if they're asking, I'm pretty positive we have a significant percentage that are silent, that are doing something similar.
So, and the comment you made, Jason, are some of the early people, were they set up, did they use just the library cards, or did they use picture ID?
It's always been in the policy that you have to have a card,
Okay,
but I know
that's
that
fine.
it also has come up early that some places perhaps were not so strict.
Without sounding wishy-washy, and if I come across that way, I apologize because I don't mean to. I still like that that's in the policy. We're very close to Fulton County. For example, I oftentimes have people who get upset because I tell them you live right over the county line. Just go there once and get your card and come back. So I don't necessarily want to have to go into all of Evergreen to find 5 Bob Smiths. I guess just in being smaller, it's when I pull someone up, for me, it's a common courtesy to increase CERC, get them out, and get the line moving. Not that I want to deviate from that, because otherwise it is a pain to try to find the Bob Smith.
I think the only way to protect us is definitely making sure that it is local. But I don't know that even if you go that route, because let's say Brownstown does or Jennings does, and they come to Seymour and we don't, that's not gonna make them happy either. They're not gonna understand, right? So, but I think to protect us locally is the best, because we're definitely gonna say no. I mean, you have to have your card.
And would you tie it to local patrons only? If you have this as a local policy, would you allow a guest from another library system?
Probably like if you use our library, you have to present your card. I mean,
But if you, I think that's a double standard though, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that wouldn't be fair.
If you're gonna allow somebody from another library come in and not use their ID versus somebody that's your patron, I don't know, I don't think that's quite clear.
So it's what I'm hearing that maybe we should all say we need to strictly enforce the fact that everyone should have a card and bring your card in, and there's no leeway and say you don't have a card, you don't get materials, we'll hold them for you and and then there is no problem when you go from one place to another, because as of January 1st, 2015, we decided this is the way it is. Everybody's been lax, and this is the way it's going to be now. And we've had so many issues, and this is moving forward. This is what we're going to do. That there's been so many problems that everybody's, so and so's doing this and so and so's doing that, and now we're having problems with this, and we don't want to use license, driver's license, so that would be the only solution, was either we all go to one and say this is the way it's going to be, and we all adhere to it, or we continue to do what we've been doing. I mean, what other options are there?
Well, I think what Jason was pointing out, that is, if we did decide that there was some ways to work it in, there would be very strict things people would have to look for. It wouldn't just be they flash their ID and you're like, oh, okay, there it is. You would have to do several different searches, to make sure you're getting the right person.
Well, you fill in 3 or 4.
Right, but you know what I
lines, you
mean,
shoot it all
different
in.
fields is
Yeah.
what I meant to say.
well, and minus the Amish population, how many records do we still have in Evergreen that do not have driver's license numbers attached?
That's very
Oh,
true.
Like, I know
More than
for the
50%.
longest time, we ran into, Jennings didn't have driver's license or birthdays in their system. And so when they would come to Seymour, we would have a problem. So how many records need to be cleaned up still that we could even offer using a driver's license?
Well, we can't require that they allow us to record that even. Because they can bring in a passport. So we can't guarantee that we're going to have a driver's license on
So
file.
then are you gonna have to open it up? You could also bring your passport. I mean, if you're allowed to check out items on a driver's license, are you allowed to use a passport?
It's complicated.
Because people are gonna
fast.
people are gonna do that. They're gonna keep pushing if you let.
And two, we continue to grow if we, have more and more people in this system, which we know we will. Doesn't that just multiply this whole thing more and more names with the same things? So, I think this is where you put your foot down and say, no, you signed up, this is the way it's supposed to be, and you need to do what you signed up to do.
Are these very strong member libraries like threatening to not be Evergreen libraries over this? I mean, I'm just curious, like what's the threat here?
They are, at least one of them is actively disregarding the policy.
So what's our recourse when someone's actively disregarding policy?
We have the EC write them a sternly worded letter, remind them that this is not policy. After that, there are a few different things we could do. We could turn off their access to the consortium so that they'd still be in the catalog, but they couldn't borrow from any other member libraries. And worst case scenario, they are kicked out.
Just interested. I'm not saying we should do that, but anyways,
No,
please let the record reflect.
And that's a long, it takes at least 18 months because you want to allow everyone to have a chance to have their say, talk it out.
I just kind of feel like if you knew this is what was one of the tenets of being an Evergreen library when you came on, why is this an issue? You know what I mean? It just blows my mind. Like, don't sign up for it if you don't think that this is what you want to do.
Well, and what are you getting out of it if you're actively rebelling against policy? I mean, for them, I know they're getting the materials, but what do they really?
For them, it's a customer service issue. They don't think it's customer friendly to require a card.
Anna,
Yes.
I see all the, I agree, I can see all these different viewpoints. I worked part-time besides my full-time job for 33 years in retail. Okay, I dealt with customer service. I get it. I want to tell you that nothing is black and white. You'll have issues where someone will come up and you'll just. Okay, so you have a mother who comes up to the service for the circulation test. She has screaming children. They want their puzzles and they want their stuff. Oh my God, she has the wrong purse. She didn't bring her library card. You have this strict policy. Can't check you out without your card because there's 10 people behind you and they all know that. Okay. So what are you gonna do?
Sell them a replacement.
Huh?
Sell them a
replacement card.
That's what we used to do.
She didn't bring her wallet. She has the wrong purse, doesn't have anything, okay? So now you've got these kids screaming, everybody's unhappy. They want their puzzles, they want their books, everything. Mother's almost in tears. So are you going to pull up her name, let her take the stuff, or are you just gonna say, I'm so sorry, I can't help you, I'll hold this and you can go home and get that. She has to load up all the kids and drive 10 minutes out the country and 10 minutes back. And you know she's not gonna do that. Kids needing out, they have to have lunch, blah, 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 whatever.
She won't forget her library card next time.
That's very true.
What happened to the
life is
It's a learning lesson, but it's
her
different
car.
too.
Are you
That's
just gonna
what's
lose
gonna
this
happen.
patron?
Or she-
Probably
yeah.
won't come back.
Yeah,
And she'll
tell
distressed
20
with
of her
you and probably won't return to the library.
Just never had that experience.
Okay.
No,
I'm just saying, so you would not sympathize with this person, let it go this time, because, and say, I know you're having a bad day, I will. The
Well,
only
but
thing
I
is
think
if
we
you
have
do-
examples where people have done that. They do the one-time lookup in a
I think
special
that's okay.
circumstance.
But
It's
I
when
think-
it's someone
I
who's
think the
chronic.
issue is making it
You just- I mean, you have
anytime.
strict rules, you just, I mean, so then if you break it for her, then you're gonna keep, so, see, I don't, how are you gonna stop that?
I think it's a one-time lookup versus the every time that person comes in, let me hand you my driver's license and look me up.
Right. And
I think that's the
you
difference.
see the difference in the people who are every time
Yeah.
versus, please let me get them out of here.
What if the guy has one time with her and then he does it one time with her?
That's why we put it on the, that's why we put it on the alert.
Detox her into
Well, then
always
that's
gonna
a
be
staff issue, not a policy issue.
I just think that if you handle it correctly, okay, and you do say, I am really sorry, but it is policy that you must have your library card. I will happily hold these. I'm really sorry you're having a bad day. You can do it in a graceful way. You know, you can enforce things in a graceful way, but you're gonna not make you can't make every single person happy. I mean, it's just impossible to do. But if you handle it with a little bit of finesse and a little bit of grace, then you're not the one in the wrong. There are rules in life. You must bring certain things. You can't fly without your ID. You can't, you know what I mean? These are just simple things. I think when we keep letting people off the hook because, oh yeah, it's a tough time, then no one's ever really responsible. I want people to be responsible with my materials. And if they can't even remember to bring their card, then.
My kid's in kindergarten, he doesn't even get a reprieve for one day for getting his folder or his homework. I mean, it's automatically, he loses his.
Okay, Mom, give me your card, you can't check.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing I did one time that I felt bad for a guy. I checked out to him on my card.
I would not recommend doing that.
Risky, but that makes
yes,
you responsible for it, so.
I decided to take the responsibility, made sure he checked out on a card, it was my card. But I'd rather, in that case, I would rather do that than not let him know his stuff. But not many people do that.
That was your financial responsibility at that point, then, so that was your choice.
3 books on CD, you mentioned.
There you go. Wow.
Very
I hope we brought it back.
And I didn't know the guy.
That's grace. Just saying.
I'm not that nice person. Well, I just think you have to know how to say no. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we do have to say no at times in this world. You just do. You just have to do it in a way that, you know, is good customer service.
I think it is good customer service by having them bring their card because it eliminates problems that you could have down the line.
And you know, if somebody has the keys to their car, it's a keychain.
Right. So, that's all I was answering the question, are you gonna do something about next year then that makes everybody handing up their cards or are you gonna continue as they're doing?
It sounds something like there's like the Evergreen police and
We
we can go
can-
through and, you know,
well,
see if people are
Gonna
doing
have
it. or
Evergreen
not.
secret shoppers.
On a simple level, as far as what we could do, one of the easiest things that I can do, and I already do this sometimes, is just send out something in the newsletter or on the listserv as a reminder that this is policy. We do expect all members to follow it, and that way no one's singled out. Everyone has a chance to review that policy and see if it fits with how they're actually handling things. I can do that to start. If you guys would like to think about what other steps we might want to take, or if we just want to table this for another year or so and see where things are then.
Request for comments, reminder,
I can.
because I don't care if you choose to change it or not, but if you get back 86, we want to change it, responses, that might be different.
Yes.
So like an anonymous policy versus procedure poll we can run or something.
You do like a survey.
About a survey, yeah. Survey monkey stuff's
What are you
anonymous.
actually doing?
There you
Write
go.
down your
If they're
idea.
not in this room.
That'd be a lot of work.
The only thing is who would be taking it? Who would be taking the survey? Like everyone who sees the law?
Or could you just
Well,
send it to like the director?
Because I think it needs to be Because I'm just saying, if you have every cert clerk taking this, it's gonna skew the.
Well, I didn't
Yes.
mean necessarily.
Come on,
specific
Jason, no, I'm just
survey,
joking.
just in general,
Comments.
yeah. And you can just kind of say, well, these 6 all came. So that's one.
Well, if we set up a survey, we could do something where we tried to come up with something that didn't single out a library so that they felt like they couldn't tell us because they were going to get in trouble. But, you know, maybe see if regionally we see a difference or by size somehow. Because I know I've heard from several of the small libraries, yes, you know your patrons, you see them 2, 3, 5, 6 days a week. So as our discussion has brought up, for some of these users, it is considered a courtesy to recognize that you know them, value them as a regular, to go ahead and just bring up their account, whether they bought it with their card or not. But there again, even if you're a small library, if you have guests from another small library, you're back to where we started, where you got patrons screaming at your staff in hysterics, and then I get a call because Library X is not following policy, and my staff just got the worst storm ever over it. So.
Well, and if you do that anonymously, you could also put in a field to ask what their position is, so you know if you're hearing trouble.
Yeah, like you could find out where they stand now versus what they want to see, and you could put in fields like, are you a small library or a large library?
Are you
Things like that.
Director, are you
what's your position? You know, be it a
And
clerk.
so I think that certain clerks' opinions are not valid because I certainly
Oh,
do.
yeah,
I just think it would
Yes,
kind
they're
of
the ones
skew
that
things. There's so many more of them than there are
Exactly.
directors and the like. Okay, so I take it that we want to table this, get some more
Get some more
information,
input.
and then go from
Then
there.
we'll talk about it.
But until that point, we should all be following the policy as it's written.
I second that.
Okay, so let's go on to the pre-cat circ duration defaults. I think, Sandy, this was your.
Yes, what it is that pre-cap cert duration is 2 weeks. Since most items go circulate for 3 weeks, we're wondering if we could have that changed to 3 week instead of 2 weeks.
Okay, that's if you don't use the circ mod, which you are supposed to be using. First off,
What?
a circulation modifier.
Yeah.
When you do a pre-cat, if you pick the right circulation modifier, it will automatically go to 3 weeks. If you put book in, it resets.
I don't remember there being a certain modifier on it.
It's
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
it's
very bottom.
It's a new thing
Very
in
bottom
one of
line.
the past upgrades, 2.2 maybe. I remember it did not work originally on 2.2, so that might have been why it didn't get to be more popular.
That's a quick fix.
Probably just watched this last
But
episode.
Jason, do you want to talk about what else is
Well,
going into that?
part of the reason it's set up the way it is because ILLs are frequently done as pre-cats, and rather than you having to trim the due date, it would be nice if the patron could renew it maybe for another week or 4 days. It depends on how long you've got your ILL out. You know? And that's why there's also no renewal by default, because that's either the patron could renew it longer than you've got it borrowed for, or various annoying things like that. But if there is enough interest over this certain modifier change, it could possibly be looked into, but then you might have more work for ILLs.
There's also missing and found hold capturing. It's Sandy, this was you again.
What we have found is if the missing items comes back, if there is a hold on it, it is not captured.
Not until the next day. Yeah. The reason for that is annoying, and it's the same as new items. It's basically when holds get checked, there's kind of a map made of every potential copy that could fill it. And if one of those copies gets checked in, then it'll be grabbed and that's fine. Missing copies, lost, and in-process copies don't get considered as part of that map. So when that goes from missing to available, these holds maps are only checked once a day for each hold. So it could be at least a day, or it could be an hour, depending on when that hold was last checked. You never know. They get redone every 15 minutes, something is looked at. So that is why that happens. If you know there's a hold on that, you want to force it, there is an option in check-in. Down in the bottom, there's a check-in modifiers menu. I believe retarget local holds is what it's called. And it will find one that it can fill. It's kind of like going through all the holds on that title and clicking retarget for each one until it finds one that you can capture.
Karen, I also want you different library cards for juveniles.
Must have. Well, they thought it would be helpful if the children had a different color card. The president.
We can't do it on the current contract, but we'd have to put it back out to bid. And
Well, it was just, I mean, a lot of times little kids come in and they use their parents' cards when they're checking out materials. The parents are using the kids' cards. And unless you're looking at birthdays and things, you don't know who's using what. You don't know if the father's using the son's card and somebody using the father's card. We have had, and I've seen the thing on Blizzard about the daughter trying to check it out for 50 Shades of Grey. We actually, when 50 Shades of Grey first came out, we had a third grader girl trying to check it out. It was just, I mean, which there's movies and things that it would just be simpler if they had different color cards.
What we have done at our mini ranches is put little stickers on the kids' cards. Yeah, and some of those little stickers will stay really well. So that way the parent knows what's the kid's card and what's theirs, because each one of the kids, the little bitty brown ones that you get, they'll pick out a butterfly or frog or a fish or something. So the kid knows which card, and the parent can equate that with whatever they like. And it works pretty well. It stays on there. Or at least we have found that it stay on there pretty well.
I'll get some sort of symbol on the white side with the Sharpie.
We've done that.
That eventually rubs off.
And
Yeah.
Eventually, I mean, it takes us some time.
The stickers
And
last
kids
longer.
Labels over their signature because those are right on.
Yeah.
I guess we'll have a sticker in that too.
If you had colored cards for different color for juveniles, then you would know that they were using somebody else's card at the self-checkout. I don't want them to know. I don't want to have to say, oh, I see you're not using your card.
Is there not a profile status that you can choose? Like,
Limited access.
It doesn't do anything, you can still check out.
yeah, but I was thinking if she was turning her in.
Are we talking sensory?
No.
It sounds like it.
Well, they have parents who max out their cards, and when they come in and use their kids' cards to get their movies and all their other things.
But that child has to be there checking that thing.
Yeah,
Because
they use their kids' cards to get their stuff.
The argument I've heard with that one is they're the ones that are fiscally responsible anyway, so they're just hurting themselves.
If you know that
It's
they're
definitely
in
not
bad
right.
standing, do you not bar or block your children's cards because like the parents in bad standing?
No.
We do.
No, we don't do that to the children's cards because it's not fair to the child that their parent is irresponsible. So,
Well, their card's not gonna be able to be used.
We limit them, we add a note or an alert, I can't remember which of the two we do right now. And say that they can only check out, children's materials only. So then our staff knows to look, and if it's obviously not a children's book or children's movie, sorry, this has to be kids stuff, it's your card. And that's what we've dealt with it, when the parents owe money and want to use the kids' card. And we'll even limit the amount they're allowed to check out too at times, 2 DVDs and 3 books or something. That's just kind of how we worked around with that. Because that does come up a lot.
I had a related question that was an issue that came up for us, and I'm sure it does for other people, and it can be brought up separately if need be, but how do you guys handle if you have a child then that kind of flip-flops who the custodial parent is? And so who that one is, if it changes, who's the one that's fiscally responsible? And that somebody took more books home and the fines are from the action of the parent with the child.
I think what we've recommended is if they're with dad, that dad uses his card. And if they're with mom, mom uses his card and the kid just doesn't have a card, I think is what we've recommended. Unless the child already has an account, then it gets a little sticky.
Right.
Yeah.
I think when we discussed it before, we also talked about in that case, especially if it's a non-amicable split between the parents, then the child could have 2 cards, one with mom fiscally responsible, one with dad fiscally responsible. That way, that child.
they have 2 accounts.
Yes.
It's kind of a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
I think we did talk about that.
Yeah, we have discussed that. Sometime last year.
It's kind of rare.
It's not a very common thing, but we do have those parents that positively hate each other.
Yeah, sometimes it's enough that I think everyone's trying to do it at least once.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Or grandparents get involved.
So is the reason we're looking at, to get back to the cards, is the reason we're looking at that to be beneficial for the patrons, so the mom who has her card and the kid's card and everything on the same, it's easier with it for us.
Yeah,
Because there's already the juvenile pops up on the thing.
Just takes a second to look at the screen.
And the date of birth usually.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't help with self-checks, but it's kind of one of those, what we don't know.
We don't. We had an interesting situation. A young man brought up a card that I scanned it. I just happened to be at the circulation desk, and the first name was Brittany. It was Brittany Jean something, and I said, I don't think this is her card. I said, this has a female's name. He was like, no, I'm Brittany. And I was like, really? Okay. And I was like, well, what's your date of birth? Because I just wanted to check a couple of points, and he gave me the correct date of birth. And I'm like, what can you do? I mean, I couldn't say, no, you're not. I mean, he could be Brittany. I really don't think he was Brittany, but he knew all the right answers. So it was like, well, Brittany must have given him her card, What can I do about it? Brittany Jean. It's kind of like a boy named Sue.
So I had a guy that comes in and dresses like a woman, and his man's name, so.
It all works. That's true. You just never know. Okay. Is there any other new business for this meeting?
Yes, the cataloging
Oh,
committee's
that's right.
recommendation. They've been looking at it because a lot of libraries are dramatically adding to their e-reader collections right now. And I know it's been less than 6 months since we addressed the CERC matrix, but they had a recommendation that we consider adding a new circulation modifier specifically for e-readers that had 7, 14, and 21 day durations, and then we would convert the equipment back to being 1, 3, and 7. So that libraries that had alternate equipment like projectors or laptops would have the shorter durations available to them again. It would be non-transiting, holdable with a high fine option.
So they want the e-readers separate so that they can circulate.
It'd be a separate circulation modifier, yes.
I wanted to clarify it in my head.
And one of the reasons it's actually under discussion is that two things are happening. One, we have more libraries that are circulating preloaded e-readers. So they want to be able to say, this is a book. There's actually 85 copies on here, but this is a book. It circulates the same as a book does. And we've also changed the EIDC, the E-Indiana Digital Consortium now has 21-day ebook circulation as well. So that would provide the option for your end users to borrow with whichever circulation period you preferred for books.
One reader.
Or none. They did not make a recommendation on that point, so that is definitely something to consider.
We've been talking about this because we're adding e-readers, and we talked about how we would like to see one renewal because if they're right in the middle of a book,
You can't get the renewal.
right, and not that they can't check it back out again, but if somebody did place it on hold, but that it was an option.
What do you got? Anybody else feel strongly about it?
I think it's a good idea.
With one renewal?
I would do
Yeah.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Do we need
So moved.
Yes, and this will, and because this is actually a policy, it will go to the EC for approval in February.
Can I get a second to Sandy's motion?
All in favor?
I remember the right words. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Is there any other new business for today? Nothing? Okay. I guess our announcement would be that we're meeting March 17th, same place, same time. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Moved, yeah. I'm bad at this, but I'm working on it.
You'll get it right. You'll get it right.
Actually, we do have one announcement. This is Sandy's last meeting. She is retiring. So we're going to need a new secretary.
Okay.
The good news is we're recording these, so that makes it a little easier if you need to go back and check your notes. Anybody want to volunteer for the next two meetings? Ready? Okay.
What did I want? I'm just kidding.
Did I just agree to? All right.
What does the bug hunter look like?
I can email this, but I can actually, so we don't have wireless printing yet, so I can email it to myself.
Supposedly I can get it, but I think